All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, fun stuff because we wanted to talk gender and sex stereotypes, but we'll have to do that another time because we have a DNC going on and lots of stuff going on in the political world. We've got the RFK situation and what's going on with him as far as his legal battles and whether he's going to stay in or drop out. We've got the DNC going on, which just called itself the pro-life party at one point, and they have the abortion truck outside, which we'll get to that as well, and probably various other things. Which actually I can include a little bit of the gender talk in and the masculinity femininity thing because that's important when talking about Trump because I kind of had, as you had put that forward, and back in school, and I put up the righteous mind, how good people get divided over politics. I'm having to really curate the way I talk to be able to stay virtuous and still make an A in the class.
hmm
So I did have some thoughts on that I've been working on that actually might be relevant.
Well, where are we starting? You want to start with give our thoughts on the
Well,
RFK news, or
let me see which tab is up first. Yeah, let's do the RFK news. All right.
because scrolling through Twitter here on Wednesday, the 21st, I saw a couple of posts saying that this is looking more likely or that they have sources that had confirmed it, but I wasn't seeing very many people talk about it or anyone I know who I know by reputation enough to say, okay, well then this is probably happening.
Well, this is Nicole Shanahan, the VP pick, which actually I watched some of her other stuff finally. I've been talking about doing it, and it was pushing me away a little bit because she sounds like in her podcast and in her interviews like that HR person that likes to tell you how to do your job even though they've never
Mm,
done it. So she kind of has that feel coming across, and her pacing is that way. What she actually thinks is really hard to because she's been on the kind of the PR uh, ride this whole time and never really got to talk about policy. So it's really tough. But we might not have to worry about that because here we go.
know, there's two options that we're looking at, and one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Waltz uh, presidency because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump and we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision.
All right. So from the horse's mouth, they're weighing that decision, whether it's true or not, whether it's going to happen. Like you said, you're getting conflicting things just on the Twitter space, and
hmm
we don't know who's got what connections where. But this is actually one that I have to say I probably was wrong because remember way back in the beginning when he jumped in, I had the opinion, and I think you were kind of leaning that direction too. He's going to draw more from Biden because the people who can't stand Trump, who aren't Republicans, who are Democrats, but they're really
hmm
on the fence because it's like, well, it's going further than we want, but it's not a. I'm still a Democrat. The Bill Maher types, you
hmm
know, I thought it was going to draw more of them to the center, to the independent party, but it actually, as time went on, because of so much overlap in their policies and how ridiculously religious the Democratic Party is right now, it actually turns out that she's probably right. They are pulling more Trump voters than
Yeah.
than they would because I mean we're a great example. We were weighing RFK Trump. We never considered Biden or Harris because of their extreme incompetence and positions, both combined. So it actually we're good examples of how it probably is drawing more from Trump.
Um, I wonder how much the switch to the soft coup that dumped Biden, I wonder how much that factors into this though, because I think early on when we I think I think we probably talked about that around the time RFK dropped out of the Democrat primary and went independent, which was a while ago. And that was at a time when the polling actually looked a little better for RFK because early on, just most normal people aren't paying attention because they have stuff to do.
Yeah, well, and we're seeing a lot of conflicting polls now, and it's hard to find out what's true. And so if you look at the ones that put Kamala ahead, when they switched from Biden to Kamala, it basically cut RFKs in half overnight.
Mm.
And that's the part that makes it, to me, everybody's like, oh, well, Trump was up and now all of a sudden everything's switched. It's like the midnight madness again. And I'm like, actually, the reason it switched is because it pulled all the RFK voters. And that's what made me look sideways at it, because RFK voters don't like Kamala either. RFK voters are pure policy voters. They're not feelings one way or the other voters.
But it makes me wonder if that, again, assuming we can trust these sources and they're doing legitimate statistical work and not how can I manipulate this to push whatever narrative I want. I'm wondering though if that shift away from RFK, if that's true, then that could be, yeah, I don't like Harris that much, but at least she's not a dementia-addled 80-something-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So
so you're saying the people that were shifting RFK just because the senile
that didn't
but that's
want to vote for Biden.
5%.
Yeah, that didn't want to vote for Biden, but wouldn't vote for Trump. And I think there's also probably still an element of the how much are people actually paying attention, because a big reason for the bump in polling, if it's true, would simply be that how many people have any idea who Kamala Harris is and where she came from and what she stands for and what her policies are. And even now, she's not doing interviews. Since she has become the official nominee, well, even before that, because when they just said she's going to be our nominee, but before they had the official vote, uh, she's not doing interviews. She's not taking questions. She's not sitting down to, she'll do a speech and it'll be heavily clipped, and the mainstream media is running her campaign. So there's going to be this bump. There's conceivably going to be this bump from people who aren't paying attention because it's the hot new thing. Like this happens in Republican primaries, especially, every time, which is you have the presumptive nominee, and then you'll have there's this, this person gets a bump, and then the more they get exposed, the more people go, oh, well, maybe that's not the answer to the presumptive guy.
Yeah, and this is one of the major players here too. Like you said,
geez.
heavily clipped, only speeches, not taking interviews. This is the difference. Realistically, when you look at these are private companies, these media organizations. This should count as campaign donations. They're going after Musk for interviewing Trump. How is this any different? This is well, I can tell you how it's different. This is different because it's curated. Musk and Trump was an unedited conversation. It was an interview. If they were just having Kamala on to Kamala, I don't know. The people who tell me that you can't mispronounce her name or it's racist actually pronounce it all three ways. So, yeah. But at the same time, yeah, they could have her
pronounced whichever way is best for whichever audience you're trying to pander to at the moment.
Yeah, if you platform her in an unscripted interview, that's not a donation. But if you basically make commercials for her, which is what they're doing, that's a donation. Commercials cost money.
Let me take this 20 to 30-second clip that is,
or even
favorable.
A step from that, a montage of favorable clips.
And play that and then just tell the audience, see, she's great. Everything's fine. We're all fine here. How are you?
Well, or clipping the opposite side interview, the famous one going around. Did you listen to the Musk Donald interview?
No.
Okay, so there was one part where they were talking about nuclear energy, and they were kind of going back and forth on it and on what the dangers are of it. And Musk was kind of, again, this was a legitimate conversation because Musk was saying we need to be careful with this because Fukushima, because, you know, the Chernobyl issues and everything and how long that lasts. And Donald Trump brought up, but it also depends because you can actually go to the areas of Hiroshima and, you know, Nagasaki, and it's actually okay now. So it's different versions of the same thing, and we can figure out how to work with that and make it better. And they clipped that to where it sounded like Trump was saying nuclear fallout's no big deal, and they ran with that story.
Mhm.
So
I hadn't seen that.
I'll see if I can find it while you're doing your next talking point. But it's amazing what they're doing one way or the other. And I've got a client in the morning. She's not an awful, but she is easily swayed, even though her and her family's going to vote Trump. They're very conservative on the social side, and so that's keeping them there. But she's still just like every other middle class woman, going, "Why does he have to talk like that? Why does he have to make fun of her?" Da, 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 da. I'm like, "Where did you hear that? ABC, NBC, CBS?" He could say 20 things about policy because she was like, "He should just stick to policy. If he would do that, I would like him more." He could say 20 things about policy and one thing about Kamala is this, you know, whatever. And they will only run that one thing he said like it was everything he said.
That's why I mean, I'm going to keep ranting that. And there was a story a week or two ago that he has officially brought in Tulsi Gabbard to help with, specifically for debate prep, to help with that first and probably only debate that is going to be in, I think, what, like October 1st on CNN.
September
So,
10th.
oh, there's one in September? I saw maybe the VP one is the one that is
that's the VP, October
okay, that's October
6th or something.
Okay. But depending on who the moderators are, I mean, he's going to have to try and rein himself in and be the right kind of combative with the moderators because they are going to be egregiously biased. And if he can shine a light on that without being obnoxious, that will help him because part of his shtick is that the whole establishment, which includes the media, is against me. You know, therefore, you know, if you're taking flack, it means you're over the target, right? And use you. I love your idea of his opening statement should just be to quote Tulsi Gabbard from that debate where she just
and even now is like
Harris.
She's been coaching me, she's been working with me, she gave me permission. This isn't plagiarism.
And then lead whichever way they think is more impactful, either leading up to or right after that just flood the airwaves with ads that are just clips of that debate of, you know, Tulsi Gabbard in her own words, and then those beautiful shots of Harris realizing I've just been destroyed. You sunk my battleship. I'm done. Because she just got wrecked, and it's glorious.
Well, but see, here's the problem, and this is with the demographic that I just said to you. Okay, so now that this is actually the perfect place for me to interject that masculinity, femininity thing. We know from the data in the dating game. Peterson's big on talking about this. You see it on all of the dating experts that Williamson has on. They all say the same thing because this is replicable in social sciences, which is rare because we have the replication crisis. Women have trouble, especially at a young age, discerning between narcissism and grandiosity and competence. That's why these young losers end up getting all the girls, because they talk a big game. And women get better at it as they get older, probably from just a lot of bad experiences of discriminating between the two. But what they seem to not get better at is discriminating between alpha behavior and bullying. They are different. Alpha behavior is dominance amongst equals. Two evenly matched people in a fight and one comes out on top. Real alpha males do not bully the beta males. They assert themselves amongst the other alphas. And we can include females in that too, because in politics, it's not a fist fight. Everybody's on equal ground. So everybody talking about what did people talk about in 2016? He's bullying Hillary. He's coming after her because she's a female. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's actually an equal fight. She was a senator of freaking New York. She was a high-powered lawyer before she ever married Bill. Okay? This is an equal fight, and he's fighting and she's fighting. There is no bullying here, but everybody just sees man woman and they think fist fight in their head. This isn't a fist fight. If he walked across the stage and punched her in the face, he would be a bully. But he's just giving what she gives and getting it back, and they're going back and forth. Same thing with Kamala. He's giving what she gives, but everybody's going, "Oh, he's such a bully." No, this is a fist fight. Look at him when he deals with people that are quote unquote under his pay grade. Listen to his employees talk about him. He's great. They love him. He's the most popular man in Trump Tower by the people who do the service work, because he goes down there and he knows, I know I have an advantage over you guys. Line up. One of you is going to get this $100. You know, that's the kind of man he is behind the scenes. If he had picked on one of those people, one of those guys and gals that works for him, a service worker, it's like the woman who treats the server like they're horrible because they got the order wrong or whatever.
I don't know how I ended up here, but I accidentally clicked on some video talking about how Conan O'Brien accidentally points out how awful all the other late night hosts are, because, and I hadn't realized this, apparently that's a big thing to Conan, is you treat the subordinates, you treat the workers well. And he once fired a staffer because they were rude to a waiter when they were out at a company lunch, and someone was being rude to the staff, and they got and Conan fired him because he's, no, I'm not going to have that in my team.
This is huge when we talk about the dating game. What's one of the biggest red flags that always comes up that's true, it's not just trendy, is how does the person you're on a date with treat the service staff? Because there is a power dynamic there. It does, but there's a separation in your mind of what's a power dynamic in the moment and what's a lesser person. There is no such thing as a lesser person. We are all human beings. That person, though, is subservient to you. That's why they call them the server, because you're there spending the money at the company they work at. So you have the power in that dynamic. And if you treat the service like they're crap, well, that tells me what kind of person you are, because you're willing to reduce their humanity based on the power you have over them. And that's different than two people across the ring coming at each other and they're in a fight. And even if it's a fight of ideals, which levels the playing field between male and female.
So I'd forgotten that I'd kind of teased this, and I know we talked about it offline a fair bit, but the masculine feminine dynamic, one of the things that comes into play here is because of gender differences in voting and the different voting blocks, sex differences in voting. Yeah, more precise there. And that's a big deal, because that is where Trump is clearly weakest, is with not just the female vote, the women vote. I've talked about this before, is the single women overwhelmingly vote Democrat and always have. And there's almost nothing he can do to get those women to vote for him, to shift any of those numbers. But there are things he can do to shift the numbers that traditionally vote Republican if they vote, which is married suburban women. And Steve Deace went off on a rant about this several weeks ago, and he pulled up the numbers going as far back as there are numbers, which was either the 76 or the 80 election, depending on which exit polls and demographics you're talking about. And he pointed out that if Trump had just done the Republican average with suburban white women, we would not be having this discussion, because we would be busy with a Republican primary, because Trump would have served 2 terms. because I think he got like 5 to 7 points below the average. I think he still won married women, but he won it by like 5 to 7 points less than the Republican average.
Mm-hmm.
And something Day said that I then, so the numbers were all there. That was all supported. And I was like, well, that's pretty incontrovertible. But then he had an opinion that made me go, that might be true in your bubble, but I don't think that's true in general, which was this, that we have laughed before about where Kamala came from. The fact that she slept her way to the top. And I think we've mentioned this before while recording, is that you can make fun of it, but you better not underestimate her, because okay, but where are all those men that she slept with to get ahead now? They're at the
Mm-hmm.
bottom. She's the one on top. So she's certainly capable in her shamelessness. But his point was, crafted right, women are more critical of other women than even men are.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of voters you're trying to get, the married suburban woman, mostly white, they are going to be more swayed and more critical of that. Now, her voting base, the single women, they would rally around that kind of attack, but you've already lost them anyway. And I thought, I don't think that's true. I don't know how easy you would be able to sway on the fence voters who don't want to vote for Harris but don't like Trump. I don't know how swayable they are with that kind of a campaign, that kind of an attack or a talking point.
Well, especially since the campaign at some point doesn't matter much, because it only matters what gets out to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the news coverage there. So you're only going to sway that certain person who who watches or listens to that certain thing. Like my professor last night kept going on about how she loves NPR podcast. You think they're getting that on NPR podcast? By the way, she's the definition of an awful, but uh, it's yeah, she's getting her source from one place. So it's
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to do? You have to find some way to get that message into the mainstream.
And so, out of curiosity, I just, obviously anecdotally, but so I said, well, let's test this and let's talk to a few different women about this. I asked my wife, who leans more right and is in that is in that target demo that Dace was talking about, because she is a conservative, suburban, married woman who did not vote for Trump previously, but obviously does not want to vote, will not vote for the Democrat ticket, but doesn't want to vote for Trump. And so I asked her about this, and she, she doesn't pay that much attention to politics because she's a smarter person than I am and thus more mentally healthy. And she didn't even know this backstory of Kamala. And when I started laying it out, her instinctive response and what she thought most women would instinctively respond to was, well, yeah, but what's her side of the story? Is this just smearing, or is this actually true? So
yeah, she could have been a young, impressionable female, and he had that power dynamic. That all could be true, but it doesn't change that she kept going with it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so her instinct was what first, what's her side of the story, and then secondly, yeah, but who is she now? She's married, she has kids that she can bring up on stage for the photo op, and so she didn't think that was a very good argument and for her, and didn't think it would sway many other women. So then I asked someone else who leans more left, lives in California, and is a single mom. So is the opposite demographic, is the demographic that you probably wouldn't sway with that argument that Dace was talking about. And I asked her what she thought of Kamala Harris, and her response was, I think I'm about getting the quote right on. I think she's as dumb as a box of rocks and should be kept away from any place of responsibility. So to her, to your point earlier, the competency argument is what mattered to her. Is I don't know that I'll vote for Trump, but I sure as heck am not voting for Harris because she's dumb as a box of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that matters more. And here's another bit to add to the anecdote. And so a week or two after that is when the vice presidential nominee was announced, and my wife told me, "Hey, you may be interested to hear this because I got this message from my friend who lives in Minnesota, um, and is a middle-aged single woman, and she is one of these what I mentioned are the people who aren't paying attention, the people who are living their life. It's not close enough to election time for her to have started looking into the candidates and decide who she's going to vote for. And as she related, this woman basically she feels like she knows who Trump is, but she doesn't really know who Kamala Harris is. So as it got closer to election time, she was going to look into her to see if, do I hold my nose and vote for Trump, or can I proactively vote for this person, or do I just leave the top of the ticket blank? And she said when Waltz was announced as the nominee, she says, not only is there no way in heck I'm voting for the Democrat ticket, I am voting Republican. And this is someone who goes back and forth, that it depends on who the nominee is. They, is not a straight ticket voter ever. But the way Waltz handled the lockdowns was so egregious to this person. In particular, because as I said, single woman, but she has parents that she takes care of. And her mother in particular is in poor health. That was made much, much more difficult because of Waltz. And the kind of women you are trying to get, women in general lean towards safety and security over freedom. That's why they tend to vote more left
and
than right.
egalitarianism.
And
that's why they lean socialist in a lot of issues.
And so that's also why during the lockdowns, a lot of the people in positions of authority, as well as just the random schmoes online pushing for the more rigorous measures, were women. For a lot of women, that pendulum swung the other way. The longer it went on, the harsher it got. And more importantly, going back to my anecdotal evidence, the woman in California, she wasn't sure her daughter was going to be able to graduate on time because the lockdowns were that severe and there wasn't any sort of support structure. And so the online classes were not working. Her daughter was not learning. And this is awful. I don't know what I'm going to do here. And same thing with this woman in Minnesota is focus on that, because their initial instincts were safety and precaution over anything else. But then as it became severe, oh, wait a minute. Now you're hurting people. Now you're hurting families because, Waltz is out there literally giving decrees from on high saying your Thanksgiving gathering can't be more than like 6 people. And I'm going to enforce this with the police. Stalin called. He wants his game plan back, you jerk. But and then especially what was happening in schools and with the kids. I think that focus, that attack is much more effective, especially if you're using you attack her pick of Waltz because of what he did as governor during the lockdowns, and then you use Tulsi to attack Harris for her competency, using those clips from that first debate. And I think that is a much, much more effective ad and a much better way to pull those suburban married women that you're
Well,
you're not winning as strongly as you should.
Here's Trump's weakness with the lockdown thing is he signed off on it.
Yep.
And he needs to come out and get over his own ego and say, here's what I was told by Fauci. Here's what I was told by Birx. I did this thing and I was wrong. He needs to say those words. Until he does that, it will never be an issue he can win.
Yeah, that was RFK's biggest strong point in in arguing his case, which was, look, we all saw, a lot of us had our eyes opened with the lockdowns on what this government is and what it can do and what it will do, and both of these people were part of the problem. Neither one of these people, both of these people exacerbated the problem rather than making it better. And if he is going to come out and endorse Trump,
he needs to be he needs to say Trump has me to guide him for these things now.
He and Trump need to find a way to square that circle.
Sorry, something you said in that rant made me think of this Washington Post headline.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And I did find the clip that I was telling you about if you want me to play it here.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is what clipping does. This whole conversation was a back and forth on the safety of nuclear energy from a power standpoint, and they did bring up the fallout from the nuclear explosions in Japan and how it's a little different there, and maybe there's other things, but this is what they give you on CNN.
I want to play one exchange that was kind of classic. Well, there were a lot of exchanges that were classic Donald Trump, but this one really stuck out to us.
And Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's really not something that, you know, so it's not as scary as people think, basically.
So that was more Elon Musk than Donald Trump talking about.
Shut up.
That's what you get. Go listen to the whole thing on that, and it's a completely different discussion than what you get from that. If you just get that, you're like, oh my God, they think we can nuke something and just live there right afterwards. No. They presented that in nuclear bombs aren't that scary. Yeah, that's not what the conversation was about.
Yeah, that's right back to the find people on both sides playbook
which they're still playing, by the way.
They're still doing. Yeah, I think that didn't a couple of people at the first night of the DNC, didn't a couple of people mention that? Was Obama one of them? Biden did. Okay, Biden's the one still doing it. Yeah, but he's got dementia, so, you know.
He also says women don't have electric power.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Yeah. We're doomed.
Well, let's this is a good segue, because speaking of doom, let's talk about the policy. I just brought up that headline from WAPO that was basically based on her price controls, right? People don't get this because they only see what they pay for in the store. This price controlling groceries and commodities has been the first step to genocide in every communist regime in history, because you can't control from the top down. You have to figure out a way to build from the bottom up. Otherwise, eventually you're going to get to the bottom and someone's going to have to be forced to do something. And when they refuse to comply, they kill them, which is what happens. So we're going to end up with a farmer strike and a trucker strike and all of these things if we implement that policy. And then we'll see what our government does in response. Maybe they won't kill them, but they may do something to force them to work. Slavery. Maybe put them in prison and put them in a farming camp. Kamala never did anything like that in California. Which is, again, back to the Tulsi Gabbard thing, because that was one of her bullet points, was that she kept people in prison to keep them as basically slave labor.
I wonder how much of this is actual policy that they want to implement, and how much of this is campaigning for that vote we were just talking about. Because the primary purchaser of a household is the wife. Usually, more often than not, they're the ones buying the groceries. They're the ones buying kids new clothes and shoes every time it's school time now. So there are probably a lot of moms out there going, holy crap, how are we going to afford this? Because kids grow out of their clothes. They need new clothes. They need new shoes, and school's about to start, and we need all that stuff. So they're the ones they're the ones most impacted most often by this rampant inflation. They're the ones literally seeing it. And so it makes me wonder, are you actually going to try this? Or is this just a cynical attempt to say, hey, moms out there who are doing the grocery shopping and noticing that, golly gee, everything's twice as expensive or more than it was 4 years ago. Don't worry, we'll fix it. Well, I mean, you're in power now. You could fix it now, but just whatever. Okay.
I would say there's two things about her record that would actually support both sides of that discussion. The first one is she's been known to say anything to win. So there's your just pandering and not intending to do anything. But then you actually look at her voting record, and her voting record goes right in line with everything that would implement those things. So which is the right one? I say a combination of both would probably be the least likely outcome. Maybe she tries to do it a little more softly than what she's saying, but at the same time, a little nudge in something as massive as the food market, industry is going to have ripple effects across everything. Look at the Keystone Pipeline. Let's go back to day one of the Biden administration. That one stroke of a pen is one of the most intense contributors to the hyperinflation that followed. There's that and the stimulus checks. Those are the two, and the Ukraine money. So those three things, probably 30%, leaving the other 10% to random things that are responsible for those massive spikes in inflation, that 10-12% we had for a while. Which is, I saw the numbers the other day. In 2019, the average amount of income it took to actually become a first-time home buyer was about $59,000 a year. To be a first-time home buyer now, it's $110,000. Yeah, you get fresh out of college with your postmodern dance degree and get $110,000 a year. It's not going to happen.
Yep. That's why as nutty as this is for anyone who's knows some basic econ 101, these types of proposals do tend to be popular, much the same way. It's the same as the minimum wage argument. Oh, this'll help people, especially people at the bottom. This will help people. No, minimum wage increases only ever hurt, because it makes it that much harder for someone to get in and get experience, which is the most valuable thing in the workforce, no matter what position you are, no matter where you are in your life. The most valuable thing you have is your experience. That's what gets you a higher starting salary. That's what gets you raises. That's what gets you new positions. Well, if you can't get started, if the ladder keeps getting pulled up, then you can't grab hold of that first rung, you're screwed. And that's what happens with minimum wage increases, but they sound good.
Okay, so this is you said economics, but I'm going to say organic systems, economics being one of them. This is why so many of the greatest epidemiologists in public health have an economics background. The price capping system to help people that can't buy groceries is like giving somebody a diet pill with tapeworm in it. And this actually happened. It looks funny because it's archived in the CNN archives, but this is a CNN story. And I remember this from the early 2000s. In the early part of the 20th century, the weight loss industry allegedly found a tiny little helper in the form of tiny little parasite, the noble tapeworm. According to product advertisements of the day, tapeworms were being sold in a pill form as a weight loss tool. And this I remembered because it was huge with early morning radio hosts. They were like, this product, lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. And about a year later, all of them were like, this was a mistake. This was a mistake. My hair is falling out. My teeth are falling out because they had a tapeworm that was stealing all their nutrients. That's why you lose weight so fast. And yeah, this is the tapeworm version of an economic intervention. Oh yeah, you're going to get the immediate result. Oh, prices are down. We can buy more groceries. Yay. But then you go down the supply chain. Well, the grocery is going to tell the distributor, well, I can only pay you this much. And the distributor, because they have to sell to the grocery store, is going to tell the producer, well, I can only pay you this much. Well, now you're at the heart of it. There's more steps in between, but you're at the heart of it where it's the producer is saying, well, but it cost me more than that to make. I can't grow, that much corn for the price that you are selling it to me. So there's this two part. First of all, I said the worst case scenario. The producers are going to refuse to start to produce, and then you're going to have military intervention. That's the worst case scenario. But probably the most likely scenario here that people, and I wish conservatives would key in on this, is crony capitalism, the wealth gap. This is going to widen the wealth gap because the company that's big enough to profit, 2% and still make enough money to support everything is going to, because they can mass produce to such a scale, is going to beat the company that needs a 10% margin because they can only produce so much. And so they say it's going to help the middle class. It's going to help them right now buy groceries. But the producers that are at the bottom of that are the middle class. They're the ones that supply the jobs to the middle class. It's going to be the Bezos of the world. It's going to be, hell, even the Musks of the world that are going to benefit from this. Because as we saw after COVID and lockdowns and everything, we have the biggest change in wealth gap than we've had in the last 100 years, in 4 years. Because only the strong survived, and the strong were the companies that could make a lesser percentage profit margin and still profit because they can mass produce.
Well, much like this unrealized capital gains idea of just besides being dumb and awful,
God,
is to your point. My first thought when I saw that was what you just said of the crony capitalism angle, which is there's no way this is happening, or if it happens, there's no way it's happening the way you, the young little Marxists, think it's going to happen, because there's no way someone like BlackRock lets this happen. Okay.
Well, I was just going to bring BlackRock in because the big thing is people, they say, oh, it's only going to affect people that are over $1 million. That's not over $1 million in paycheck. That's over $1 million in total asset. So if you own a home, you've got 2 cars, you've got a miscellaneous amount that they're probably going to make very arbitrary, assuming you have this much jewelry, assuming you have this much clothes, all of those things, they're going to say, oh, well, your assets are over $1 million. Anybody in a middle-class neighborhood has over $1 million in assets. Every medium to moderate sized company is over $1 million in assets. And not only is it capital gains, but they're making it projected capital gains. So if they tell me as a business, well, you're going to make 100,000 this year, so you're going to pay 44,000 in taxes. What is it? 44%, I think.
Yeah.
You're going to pay $44,000 in taxes because you're going to make 100,000. Well, I pay those 44,000 in taxes, but what if I made 80? Oh, we'll get you next year. It's okay. We'll give you a credit. Yeah, but I've already sunk.
I'm already going bankrupt.
I'm already going bankrupt. I already had to sell it. I already had to sell the business. Oh, you sold the business? Let's go ahead and tax you on those gains as well. So yeah, that's...
But the point about BlackRock is, okay, so that's just on a small business scale, on a personal scale. BlackRock has trillions of dollars under management, and with the fluctuations of the market, you're talking potentially billions of dollars in taxes. They're not paying that. No, they're going to make sure that law is written in a way that they get away with it.
Well, not only that, they're going to make it so expensive for the government to come after them legally to pay it that it's not worth it. It's more worth it to go ahead and overtax the people who can't afford the legal fees to pay. To, you know, if they say, oh, you owe us $1,000, but it's going to be about $5,000 in legal fees to contest that $1,000, people are just going to pay it. That's who they're going after. But BlackRock also comes in because BlackRock is the one artificially inflating housing costs right now. And that's pushing people over the threshold, which is the capital gains. So now your house just went from $400,000 to $500,000. I'm kind of averaging over the country. It's a little less here, but it'd be equalized if you talk California houses. If your house goes from 400 in value to 500 in value, they're taxing you on that because you gained that 500,000, and you can't just sell the house and go buy a new one, because if your house goes up, every house around you goes up. So you're paying the fees to sell your house, and then you're trying to get back into another house, but you've got to pay the fees to get back into that other house, but it's also gone up as much as yours. So there's no point in doing that. So you just get taxed. This is going to destroy the middle class. They say it's going to help. It's going to look like it helps right in the beginning, like the tapeworm did. Then the housing hairs fall out, and then the housing teeth fall out, and then yeah.
Several years ago, I made a point in a group chat I'm in with a bunch of friends, and one of them lives in California, and he got all bent out of shape and called me a dummy for calling California a third world country because it's the richest state. Yeah, even after Chavez and Maduro, Venezuela's still pretty rich. It's not what it was. There's a lot of money in Venezuela still. It's all at the top. It's all with a small group. And then there is little
Maduro,
to no.
Candace Owens' hero right now.
Yeah. Oh, geez,
empty suit
down that rabbit hole.
Empty suit.
There's little to no middle class, and then there's this vast poor peasantry that are either wholly dependent on the government or barely making it by, and so they either have too little to do anything about it, or they're dependent on the government, so they're not going to do anything about it. That's California. That's the people fleeing California for Arizona, Texas, Florida. Those are the upper middle class people, because they're the ones getting squeezed out. I have enough assets and I have enough job experience that I can afford to move across the country. And I got to get the hell out of here because I'm getting squeezed. I can't afford to live here anymore. Well, the people below that are stuck. They're not going anywhere. They can't.
Well, it's just like our talk about inner city versus rural populations and why they vote differently. Because if you live in an inner city, you are inherently dependent on everyone for your basic necessities. You go get a paycheck and then you have to buy all your basic necessities. You're dependent on the farmers. You're dependent on the distributors. You're dependent on the place that sells it to you in that process. You're dependent on the public surface, trash, everything. So you are a dependent as an inner city person, even if you make money. All right. So we wanted to talk some things that are happening outside the DNC, and we're talking economics. So I'm going to connect the two. Conservatives, listen for one of these days that I'm trying to help you guys, because one of the big issues that's coming up in this election, because it's already a major talking point at the DNC, and it's really not being countered very well at the RNC or in any one on those aisles, Social Security, right? So Social Security is crashing. We've known this for years. It wasn't as catastrophic as maybe previously advertised, because we've been talking about the crash since the Clinton years, but it still is becoming a problem. And two things you need for Social Security to be successful is the markets to increase relative to the money you put into it. So we're putting money into it when we turn 65 or 67, whatever it is, we need that money we put in, the markets to have increased that to a certain level. That's volatile, but it trends in the right direction. The other part is because money going in and going out to the pockets of the people who have retired is not the same money that they put in. It's the money coming in that the younger generation is putting in. Well, you need more younger people than you have older people. Now, one of the problems that we that's actually a good problem to have, is we live longer. So that's a good thing. Well, up until this last cohort, we have been living longer, and that was unexpected to the original people who planned everything. The other part is you need just more younger people. Problem is we're having less and less younger people. This is Sociology Association. Whoops. And this is talking about the replacement rate. So since 2007, it declined 2.12%. It declined from what was above replacement, 2.12, which you need 2.01 to be above replacement, because two parents have one child. Sorry, gender studies people. It takes a male, biological male, and a biological female to put penis in vagine and create baby.
Make me tingle in my dingle.
Yeah, make me tingle in. Okay, that might be the meme. Make me tingle in my dingle. All right. So, and it tingle in a way that it, makes the gametes in a situation where they can get together and hook up one last time to make a zygote, right? So 2.12 was above replacement rate. That's 2007. 2022, 1.67 in 2022. This is, again, from Sociology, something, something, something. Let's look at the CDC. Birth rate for women ages 2024 reached an all-time record low. Yay, so CDC agrees. Wall Street Journal. U.S. fertility rate falls to record low. So we want to talk Social Security in the political realm. The Republicans, Trump, versus the Democrats, Kamala. Whoops. Not that one. This one. Bring this one up. Start talking about this. Make this a deal. This is your abortion talk, not whether it's right or wrong, but the fact that there's just so many. Because take a percentage of the 890 something thousand abortions that happened in that same year we were under replacement, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden we're over replacement, because that 1.67 still equated to over 3 million births. You make that another 400,000, there you go. You're over replacement. You want to save Social Security? Have more babies and make them productive. That's the cure for Social Security if you really want to have a cure for it. More young people, more productive. Now, the right is saying, oh, a lot of people on the right, I should say, that's why they're bringing all these illegal immigrants. They're trying to replace them in our workforce so that they can make the tax money off of them. Yeah, except when you are undocumented, you don't get a documented job that pays Social Security tax, Medicare tax.
Unless you're using a fake identity, or someone else's stolen identity.
Yeah, but that still doesn't come up on your tax return, because you just pretend not to be said person when taxes are due.
Well, but Social Security ostensibly comes from the payroll taxes of your Social Security, Medicare payroll taxes. So you would at least get the payroll tax off of someone like that. But you're right. Then if they're using a fake or stolen identity, that good luck getting an income tax return from that individual, unless they're just feeling very generous. But there's also,
by the way, if you're just listening, the story I brought up on X here was Planned Parenthood has filled all appointment slots for abortions and vasectomies at the National Democratic Convention. Yeah, they have a bus in front of the convention saying free vasectomies and abortions.
Yep.
This is a thing.
Planned Parenthood has a big mobile clinic, or a couple set up around the DNC. So they were, I believe it was telemed appointments for prescription abortions, abortion pills, and then on-site vasectomies. And so we started off talking about political strategery, and people who would do this aren't going to be swayed by your economic plan. These are abortion voters. And so it makes absolutely no sense for Trump to be softening his position on abortion and to be taking it. It was Trump and his people that pushed to get the abortion language taken out of the Republican platform. No one even reads the Republican platforms anyway, or the party platforms anyway. But it makes no sense to be softening your stance there because these people aren't going to vote for you anyway.
No, I'm not talking about these people though. I'm talking about the demographic we brought up earlier, which is the suburban mom. Because so let me let me give you a perspective here. Your gay rights stance was partly based on the bottom of the slippery slope, which we got to. And you can't help it. That's in the back of the mind of the same people we're talking about, that we got to that bottom of the slippery slope. Women of all demographics, other than the ones that just so women of most demographics equate this taking away of my autonomy to you will do it again to other things. You will go down that slippery slope. And so that's why I love we want to go this far, but this is the furthest we're going to go. And no one's taking that route, but then add to it. But you also want your husband or yourself to be able to retire someday, right? You know that y'all want a vacation, y'all want to have your golden years, you want all of this. Well, Social Security is going to play into that. And we need people having kids. We need them voluntarily having kids, but people are swayed by messaging. And so give a positive message for how beneficial it is for the nation that it's okay to have a kid. And we're not getting that. We're getting the it's bad, it's wrong. No, you're not going to sway the people that walked in that bus, but you can use this bus to sway the person that equates this as a step in the progression to taking everything away.
Well, I was just going to get into those demographics because pretty much anyone you ask them, they'll have a stance on abortion. But it's actually not that big a chunk of the voting populace that actually votes on abortion. It may be there somewhere, but people who get motivated to vote on that issue, that is their motivating, that is their top issue, that is the thing that gets them to the polls and makes them decide who they're going to vote for. That is primarily women.
That's what I'm saying. It's the swing vote. It is the swing vote every year.
And the women who are going to vote against Trump, they're not going to be swayed. So what all you're doing is further depressing that vote, because the left likes to paint this as a men versus women issue, and it's not, because actually the people who have the strongest opinions on this issue on both sides are women. A lot of the big leaders in the pro-life movement are women, because again, that's where that pendulum swings. Is if you are a single woman, yeah, you probably care a lot about the abortion issue. If you're a married woman with children, you care a lot about kids, and so you're going to be moved by the pro-life issue. You're not swaying anyone on the other side, Trump team. So why are you further depressing the block that you have the biggest trouble with in the first place?
You're thinking too simplistically. You're thinking way too simplistically. The women equate the abortion issue to the women's rights issue in general, and there is a good reason for that, because the biggest reason that women struggle in the workplace is because you're pretty damn vulnerable when you're pregnant. Kind of hard to work. And they equate women's rights in general to women's rights to an abortion. They put them together. You're underestimating the ability of that issue to affect everything else. And I don't know if you're just not on the ground enough, but even the most conservative in every other way suburban mom is still, well, I wouldn't have one, but we need to protect the right to have one.
No, I'm just talking about the voting demographics and
That's exactly what I just said.
and
The voting demographics is people who vote. And I'm talking about people who vote.
Yes. But
these are also people that
So-
won't understand a single word of what we said about economics.
oh geez. Statistically speaking, what I'm talking about, statistically speaking, you can have that center right, you know, suburban female, and yeah, the kind of woman you're talking about though, of the, well, I would never have one, but is probably not motivated to vote on that issue though. That's just, again, you ask someone what their stance is, they have a stance, but the chunk of people who that is going to be what swings them one way or another or motivates them to get to the poll is strongly pro-life or strongly not pro-choice but pro-abortion.
No, they're pro-life in their own life. They're not pro-life in the political realm.
No, but the political realm is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about motivating that block of voters to get out and vote for you. It's this is a portion, is a part of what needs to be done to get suburban women to vote for Trump. Is you can't soften that pro-life stance, because even though, yeah, there will be suburban women who are like, I don't know, he's too pro-life, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. But they're still swayable because that's not their motivating issue.
It is,
but
if the media says they're going to take it away.
Well, that I will concede that complicates the issue, because
Trump has been saying, hey, it's a state's issue, the whole time, but they still say, oh, he's going to bring Project 2025 and take away abortions across the country. He has very, very vehemently been against federal bans on that.
The latest kerfuffle is this nonsense about Waltz lying about how he and his wife conceived their children to make a political talking point, because one of the planks of a lot of the pro-life movement is IVF, because in vitro fertilization, if you are a life begins at conception person, you cannot square the circle of IVF, because the way that technique is done, you have dozens of embryos, fertilized embryos that are frozen. Well, people on the pro-life side have been pointing out, hey, dummy, yeah, we're against IVF because of this reason. You used the treatment that is more expensive but is more palatable to the pro-lifers, because you don't freeze a bunch of embryos. You fertilize an embryo. And so there aren't these, as we see it, frozen humans that are just sitting there forever, frozen or disposed of, destroyed. If you're a life begins at conception person, killed. So the thing you did, we have no problem with. And specifically, they were talking about an Alabama bill that would block the IVF technique of fertilizing multiple embryos and then freezing them. It wouldn't block the technique he used, which is, no, you fertilize an embryo and you implant it, or whichever way they do it, to initiate the pregnancy. And the reason I've gone down this tangent, and I'll try and bring it back, is what you said about but how many female voters would know that? how many female voters are going to, you know, see the highly curated and edited talking point from CNN, NBC et al. Of, oh, they you know, they say they're pro-family, but they would block people from having fertility treatments. But that's not even remotely true.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine people on both sides yet again.
Well, this is where RFK comes in too, and this is where he can bridge a gap. Why do we need so many fertility treatments? He's got a lot of theories, you know, and he wants to test them, and he wants to see what's going on, and he wants to use the resources of the United States government to figure out why the hell it's so hard to have a baby now. I mean, that's a pretty positive motivating factor. Musk is in the same road. He wants to see what's going on because he's on that road of, we actually need more people. We need more manpower. And here's how we go green in the process. This was part of his discussion with Trump, is actually manpower is going to be what saves the world, because the ingenuity of human beings is how we're going to make things better. And the more people we have, the more talent to draw from, the faster we're going to get there. So he's the anti-Malthusians, even though he's a kind of a green thumb guy. So so we got RFK, we've got Musk, and Trump invited Musk to be part of his cabinet. So it's like, okay, well, let's look at all these things and actually get to the root problem. And I think that's the message that needs to go out. And the problem is, you got to figure out how to bypass the mainstream media to make that the talking point in the average home, because the average home isn't listening to X Spaces. I mean, it got like 200 million views or whatever over time, but a lot of those were just the clips that came from CNN and stuff. So it's, how do we get that message bypassed into the American home? And that's the part I have no clue, because the internet world, the independent media world, is getting it to a lot of people, but those people aren't listening to NPR podcasts. The people who are the population in question we have right now.
And what I hear you saying is something I've said before, which is that the look, even if you're, whether you would call yourself pro-choice or you would call yourself pro-life, but you're just not as pro-life as I am, you know, you're not as radical as I am on the issue, you have to look at a mobile abortion and vasectomy bus as creepy. That the Democrat and the American left, the Democrat Party, has been radicalized, and what the radical left is and has been for a long time, it's just the radical part has grown. They're anti-human. You know, this is why I brought up Malthus a long time ago. This is why I, you know, brought up one of his essays as this is why I've talked about how I was swayed by the environmentalist movement in my youth, and then as it grew and as I looked at it more, I said, you're not pro-environment, you're anti-human. And you know, looking at the people posting on X and posting on Instagram about coming out of these mobile vans, this isn't some middle-aged guy who's had a couple kids and has decided we're done now.
Yeah, these
are 20-something-year-olds.
That's the ethics portion of this too. These doctors need to lose their licenses, because
this is a 20-something-year-old who's never had a kid, and you're like, you're going in for a vasectomy?
Both you and I have had this surgery done, and you remember the process when you went. The urologist checked everything to make sure it was possible, because apparently there can be deformations in there. And they interview you. They say, how many children do you have? How old are your children? How old are you? Why do you want to have this right now? Are you satisfied? Are you sure you're not going to change your mind about having children later? And, you know, I'm like 38 years old. I have a child, and he's a teenager almost now. And yeah, we've pretty much decided we're done. And he was like, yeah, okay, that's good enough. But had I been 28 with a kid on the way and being like, I'm done now, I'm done. Well, you haven't even raised a child yet. Are you sure? Maybe you get a baby bug. Maybe your wife wants a baby bug. We don't know that yet. She doesn't know that yet. You don't know that. So there's so many things, but go a step even further. These kids are 21, 22 years old going in there, and it's like your prefrontal cortex isn't even fully developed yet. Even in hunter-gatherer tribes, you wouldn't be having a baby yet as the male. You don't know. You're going to be 40 wondering why you have no legacy. You're going to be 40 miserable because you have nothing after you. And also, this is what the concerning part. The childless adult is the swing vote as well. The person deciding the future for our kids is the one who doesn't have and doesn't want children. It's a huge voting block.
That's a big effing deal. To who we are as people and who we are as a nation. There's been a lot of academic thought put into the West, the Western world, and what made it what it was, and as opposed to other parts of the world where there was, China was advanced, technologically, politically, culturally, and yet it didn't become the West. It got there came a point in time where it got left behind. Right. And so one of the thoughts, and I can't remember who coined the term, but one of the thoughts for why this happened was the Protestant work ethic. And part of that work ethic is working not for yourself. It's not just that you're working, you're not just working to get by. You're not just working for your daily needs, The idea of work is for family. It is for the next generation, so that then they can raise the next generation and the next year. It is forward looking. This ideology that would say, yeah, I'm an early 20 something, and I don't have any kids, and I know I never want any kids. It is now focused. That's not a good thing.
Let's save this for a full episode on itself, because I think this might be an interesting kind of nuanced debate, because you brought up the Protestant work ethic, but when we look at the history of China, but also I'll bring in the Middle East as well, it's actually, there's a really significant argument for the liberal values, the Enlightenment, in that progression there, because the Middle East is the quick example. They were the bastion of progress when it comes to technology, and all of a sudden, a certain guy named Muhammad, he started knocking on doors, and they're no longer they're behind everybody else, and that started at that time. So it might be the freedom of a liberal progressive, not progressive. Yeah, well, progressive is the right word if you use it correctly, because progress, it is that open society to ideas might have been the difference, because China fell behind because of what? Communism, right? There is no incentive to be in to create. There is no incentive to work harder than anybody else. The Protestant work ethic, well, you lose your work ethic in general when it doesn't matter. You get yours no matter what, or you're forced to work hard no matter what. But you work hard in a way that is not inventive. You work hard in a way that's, I'm going to get the job I'm told to do done. That's different. That's an assembly line versus, creating and making new things and trying to make life better for everyone else. So the end point is thinking above yourself, but what actually brings that about? That might be a good little respite from modern politics to have that little bit of a debate there. But yeah, this is the times, man. And let me go ahead and disclaimer that is, if anybody's just watching us for the first time and they managed to listen this long, on the abortion argument, we have many episodes way back in the early 100s, so 100 episodes ago or whatever. It's titled Abortion, a Debate. And then a couple ones after that. So you'll know where we stand. Because when Heath said we earlier, he meant we conservatives.
Yes.
Not we, Heath and Sam, because we have different opinions on that. Now, I will say my official stance is, we got Heath's official stance in this conversation already. My official stance is it should be the old legal, safe, and rare. Legal, safe, and rare. And where I have my problem with things like this abortion truck is there's almost 1 million a year. If you do count it as a death, this is where you have to understand the conservatives and have a little bit of compassion, real compassion, where you actually think things through. If you think this is a life, this is the #1 cause of death. It's double the next leading cause of death, almost, because heart disease is what, 500 and something thousand a year? Maybe pushing 600,000, and that's always #1 when they count causes of death. So if you're talking to somebody who thinks it's a life, who is 100% sure it's a life, then you have the #1 cause of death. Now have some compassion and talk to them like they know that. And then you try to shift the window to, well, let's actually have that metaphysical discussion on what a life is. That's the productive conversation. There's too many happening. We need to figure out how to make it legal, safe, and rare, in my opinion. And we can discuss where it becomes a life as the nuance. And as Trump says, should be left to the states. I actually am for a federal window of what the states can do, because I don't like the states that are chopping off heads on their way out the canal. And I don't agree with the states that say completely gone. So to have some continuity across the country, we need at least a window. So, which I can see actually Trump conceding to, because when he talked about the Department of Education in that Musk interview, they went into depth on that, because he talked about abolishing the Department of Education. That swayed my vote a little bit further that way, because yes, but he did say we probably need at least some national standard. Let the states do what they want, and we'll see what the results are. And the free market of ideas amongst the states will shift the bad ones towards the good. But he said maybe some minimum standards, like you got to be able to read and write in English, and that's okay. So maybe I can see something like that. But yeah, get rid of the DOE. And teachers unions.
Yep. For all of those who are running out there screaming that the Republicans don't want kids to be educated, dude, speaking of education, do you even know that the Department of Education wasn't founded until 1979? We won 2 world wars and landed on the moon without it. I think we'll be fine.
Well, I just talked about the power of freedom of ideas. When you have a centralized governing body determining what everybody does, you take away freedom of ideas. You tie the hands of the education, actually. And look at all of the various programs that have come out in that time to try to make it right. What was the one under Bush?
No Child Left Behind.
No Child Left Behind. Yeah. Sounds great. Great name. It didn't quite pan out. What was Michelle? Was it Michelle Obama?
Michelle Obama's program.
Hers
was
the fitness
on the nutrition.
One. Yeah, nutrition and fitness.
Healthier school lunches.
Oh, so it must have been back in the Clintons that they had another one.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's always a talking point. We continue to spend more and more money every year, and
well, if you keep doing a bad job, it will always be a talking point. That's
exactly. and the objective standards show that we spend more and more money every year, and the results are worse and worse and worse.
Well, I always use our schools here as an example. The school my son goes to has a lower tax base and budget than every other school around for the Houston metro area, which is a massive thing with many schools. And it's the number like 3 in the country in how the end results of how well the kids do in college and beyond. It's not the money. It's not the top down regulations. It's how much your teachers care and how much the parents are involved.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two things. And the teachers here take a lesser salary to be here, which tells you they care.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also implementing Jonathan Haidt's. They were all forced to read The Anxious Generation over the summer. I found that out the other day.
That's
and they're
cool.
implementing his no phones in school and all the social media interventions that he's proposed. So that actually made me excited, because I was worried for a while on some of the things that were going on, and I'm like, oh, they're going in the right direction. But we also have a new superintendent, so maybe that's helping. But yeah, it's exciting.
Well, yay, we actually found a place to end on a positive note.
Yay, hooray! Especially
Because
the things we talked
as I've
about.
ranted before, it's easier to influence positive change on the local level because there's less you have to move. There are fewer people, fewer ingrained institutions, takes less money if money is involved. So you can get much more bang for your buck, both your literal buck and metaphorically your time at the local level.
Yeah, but it doesn't. That's the problem. We're in such a global world now with the advent of the internet and the smartphone, that so much more on the top level is important now. We're back in the day when Pony Express brought you who was the president, 5 weeks after the election. That's a little different than this policy at the federal level that can be done at a stroke of a pen because of executive order power nowadays, which should be the first thing to go to make this not as important. But the stroke of a pen could say, grocery stores, you're only allowed to make this much profit margin. Okay, well, that's just going to go back down. And by the time the Supreme Court can overthrow it, damage is done. Just like the vaccine mandates. By the time the Supreme Court shot it down, hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers had lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm. Or been coerced into taking something they didn't want to
exactly.
take.
Yeah. And the side effects and everything. So I wonder if that just got us a marker on our thing.
I would hope so.
Yeah. But yeah, so go out and vote this time, and let's vote in a way that hopefully makes it less important for the next time.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the thing that does concern me about Trump is he does like that authority. And I don't think he would ever do anything to reduce the executive order privilege. And that I think is one of the biggest problems. It's the bureaucratic extent of the deep state, but also on the presidential level, the executive order is what makes the local level less powerful. So we need to bring that back down to level, and we have to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we have run out of things to yell at the clouds, and so us old men are gonna go watch Matlock and take a nap now. Next time
I'm gonna set our draft order for our fantasy draft is what I'm gonna do right now.
All right. And we'll see y'all next time for Wheel of Time. Not sure, we didn't talk about this. Not sure when that's gonna come out, because we're dumb. So we're going fishing again this weekend because you can't let the fish win.
Well, so, if you bring your laptop, remember we kept trying multiple microphones and stuff.
Yeah.
If we're just in separate rooms with laptops, that might work pretty well, because then you'll have your own mic without echoing from the others. Because we're going to be doing stuff on Saturday where we will have some free time, even though we'll be watching some Bass Reeves if you remember to bring it. But,
I grab that right now. All right. Otherwise, it might be like Monday that it gets posted. So we'll see what we can get done, and how much we can stomach, because I think there's going to be some more Matt ranting, because we have another Matt chapter to.
All right, guys. We'll see you then. No disclaimers needed. Wheel of Time next time.